Welcome to the Money Mindset and Habits podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really diving into a fascinating story. It's about Marcus. He's a 35-year-old dad, and, well, on the surface, you'd think he had it all figured out financially.
Right. Seems successful. Good job, family, the whole deal.
Exactly. But underneath, he was really wrestling with these inherited beliefs about money, stuff he picked up growing up without even realizing it.
And that's so common, isn't it?
Yeah.
We all carry these kinds of financial scripts, often from childhood.
Yeah.
They can really shape our behavior long after our actual situation changes.
Totally. And for Marcus, the core issue was this thing called a scarcity mindset. Basically, this feeling that there's just never going to be enough, no matter how much money you actually have.
That pervasive feeling of lack.
Yeah. So we're going to look at how that showed up in his life, how it held him back, and crucially, how he started to, break free from it.
And this is really relevant, I think. If you've ever felt that kind of guilt or, anxiety about spending money, even when you technically can afford it, this deep dive is definitely for you.
Absolutely. That not enough feeling, it
Yeah.
can really get its hooks into you. For Marcus, it seems like it went right back to his childhood.
His early environment really set the stage.
He grew up in Detroit, and things were genuinely tight financially. Lived with his mom, small apartment. She was working 2 jobs. Father wasn't really in the picture consistently.
So survival mode was the norm.
Pretty much. They had to stretch every single dollar. Coupons for everything, only shopping clearance racks, never ever eating out. That just wasn't something they did.
And when that's your reality day in, day out as a kid, you naturally start linking money with, hardship, with limitation, always making do.
And the things his mom said, probably trying to be practical, really hammered it home. You know the phrases, money doesn't grow on trees.
Oh, yeah, we can't afford that.
Put it back. We don't need it. These weren't just statements about their budget, were they? They became these little seeds of belief.
Creating that deep down association. Money equals stress. Money equals sacrifice. Money equals scarcity. It's almost like emotional imprinting from someone you trust completely.
It really is. But what's fascinating is how Marcus reacted as he got older. He was clearly driven to escape that reality.
It worked hard. Got a scholarship.
Yeah, got a business degree, climbed the ladder in logistics. By 35, he's making $95,000 a year. He's got a 401k, house in the suburbs, wife, daughter.
So objectively, he'd made it. Financial security achieved by most people's standards. He'd outrun the circumstances of his childhood.
Externally, yes. But internally, that's where the story gets really interesting. Despite all that success, Marcus still felt broke, like fundamentally broke.
Still had that knot in his stomach about money.
Totally. Paying bills caused major anxiety. Even just a small treat like going out for dinner would make him feel super uneasy afterwards.
And that really highlights this phenomenon, doesn't it? You can earn your way out of poverty, financially speaking, but that mindset of poverty, that scarcity thinking, can just cling on.
So what's the key takeaway there? Is it just that old habits die hard?
Well, it's more that our internal money landscape, our beliefs, our feelings about it, can seriously lag behind our actual bank balance. Our past experiences just have such a powerful, lasting grip on how we perceive things, even when the reality is totally changed.
A real disconnect between the numbers and the feeling.
Precisely. A disconnect between objective reality and subjective feeling of safety.
And the scarcity thing, it wasn't always super obvious in his day-to-day life. It was often more subtle, sneaky almost.
Right. It wasn't always about literally not having the cash. It was more this underlying fear that he wouldn't have it or shouldn't spend it.
But take his winter coat. The zipper was broken. For 2 years. He just lived with it.
2 years. Wow.
Yeah. And it wasn't because he couldn't afford a new one on a $95K salary. It was just this resistance, this deeply ingrained idea that buying a new coat wasn't, absolutely essential.
And that shows how scarcity makes you prioritize only bare bones necessities, right?
Yeah.
Comfort, well-being. Those get pushed aside, even if you can't afford them.
Yeah.
It's that fear of the future dictating today.
And it affected his family, too. His daughter wanted piano lessons. They could afford it, no problem.
But he said no.
Yep, because piano lessons aren't a necessity. That's how he framed it. It shows how that mindset doesn't just limit you, it limits the people you love, too.
Yeah. The definition of necessary gets really, really narrow when you're operating from fear. It squeezes out joy, growth, enrichment.
He even delayed replacing the tires on his car. They were dangerously worn down.
Seriously.
Yeah, until his mechanic basically forced the issue, saying it was unsafe to drive. Again, he had the money, but just couldn't pull the trigger until it was an absolute emergency.
That's quite extreme.
And maybe the biggest one, They hadn't taken a family vacation in 5 years. 5 years. Even though he was saving really aggressively.
So he was building up the savings.
But not allowing himself or his family to actually enjoy any of the fruits of their labor. What's that pattern telling us?
It's accumulation driven by fear, isn't it? Hoarding resources because you're terrified of tomorrow, rather than using them to build happiness today. The focus is just on having the money, not what it can do for you.
And speaking of family, things kind of came to a head because of his wife, Layla. She asked him this really simple but profound question.
What was that?
She just asked, why are we working so hard if we're not allowed to enjoy anything?
Oof, that cuts right to it, doesn't it?
Totally. It just laid bare that contradiction. They're building this life supposedly secure, but they weren't feeling secure enough to actually live it.
Yeah, that's the emotional paradox of scarcity right there.
And underlying all of it, it seems, was this fundamental lack of trust. Not just about money flowing in, but trust in himself. Trust that he could handle it, that he'd be okay.
And that is such a critical point. Getting past scarcity isn't just about making more money. It's about building that internal feeling of safety, of competence with what you have.
So the big shift for Marcus, the real turning point, it actually happened in a pretty ordinary place.
Where was that?
A Costco parking lot. In the rain, apparently.
Okay.
They were there to buy a new TV. Their old one was on the fritz. They'd specifically budgeted for it, saved up the money. It was all planned.
Logical purchase.
Approved. Exactly. But standing there, ready to go in, Marcus just froze.
Yeah.
He couldn't do it, couldn't bring himself to actually spend the money, even though it was all set.
Wow. Even with the plan, the fear just took over. That shows how deep that wiring goes.
And Layla, his wife, instead of getting mad, she just looked at him and said something incredibly insightful. She said, Marcus, this isn't about the money. You're afraid to feel safe.
Wow. Talk about hitting the nail on the head. That's real empathy.
It really stopped him in his tracks. Later that night, he's sitting in his car, just processing, and he actually pulls out his phone and records a voice note.
Talking to himself.
Yeah. And he says out loud, I've been chasing money my whole life, but I never gave myself permission to have it.
That's powerful. Just saying it out loud like that. That's often the first real step, isn't it? Bringing that unconscious stuff into the light.
Absolutely. And that moment kicked off a real change. He started journaling every night, really digging into where these money fears came from.
Trying to trace them back.
Yeah, back to his childhood, those phrases, those feelings, and trying to pinpoint the specific limiting beliefs that were still running the show.
That kind of self-reflection is huge. You have to identify the stories you're telling yourself before you can change them.
And some of the ones he uncovered were pretty intense. Things like, spending money is dangerous.
Okay.
Or, if I actually enjoy my money, something bad will happen, like waiting for the other shoe to drop.
That's a common one with scarcity, that feeling of impending doom if things feel too good.
And also, success is temporary. Better be ready for disaster. Just this constant expectation of things falling apart.
And those beliefs, they kind of create their own reality, don't they? If you're afraid to enjoy things, you don't enjoy them, which reinforces the feeling of lack.
Exactly. But the key thing was he started asking himself this really critical question about these beliefs he'd uncovered.
Which was?
Simply, do I want to keep believing these things?
Recognizing the choice. That they aren't fixed truths. They're beliefs you can choose to keep or discard. That's the moment the power shifts back to you.
Right. And that question really marked the start of this, 6-month journey where he actively worked on rewriting that internal money story. It wasn't about earning more. It was about changing his whole relationship with money.
Which is such an important distinction. Real financial well-being needs both the external pieces and that internal mindset shift.
So what did he do? Well, he started reading. A lot.
Getting new perspectives.
Yeah, books like, You Are a Badass at Making Money, The Big Leap, I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Just soaking up different ways of thinking about wealth and deservingness.
Learning from others who've maybe tackled similar things. That can be really empowering. Provides tools, but also just hope.
And he started doing something called abundance journaling.
Okay, what did that involve?
Basically, every morning, writing down affirmations, things like, there's always more where that came from.
Countering the scarcity narrative.
Or, money flows to me easily and supports the life I want. Just consciously trying to cultivate that feeling of abundance, of enoughness instead of lack.
And that repetition is key, right?
Yeah.
It starts to slowly reprogram those subconscious pathways, reinforcing new possibilities.
But maybe the most important part, the real game changer, was that he started intentionally practicing joyful spending.
Ah, putting the new mindset into action.
Exactly. It was deliberate, like therapy almost.
Yeah.
He finally signed his daughter up for those piano lessons.
Good for you.
He bought himself that new coat, didn't even wait for a sale.
Ah, progress.
And he planned a surprise weekend trip for Layla. Nothing crazy extravagant, but these were conscious choices to say, okay, it's safe to enjoy this. It's okay to spend on things that bring happiness.
Those actions are so powerful because they directly challenge the old scarcity rules. They build new evidence, new positive associations with money, connecting it to joy, connection, well-being, not just fear.
And the result, you guessed it. For the first time, really, Marcus felt genuinely safe with his money.
And not because he suddenly got a huge raise.
Nope. His income hadn't changed drastically. The change was internal. It was that fundamental shift in his mindset. He'd moved from fear to, well, trust.
It's such a great illustration that feeling financially secure is as much, maybe even more, an internal state than just an external number. Shifting the mindset unlocked his ability to actually feel the security he already had.
And his story really drives home that you don't need a privileged upbringing to build a healthy money mindset. It's absolutely possible to change those inherited patterns.
It really is. It starts with awareness, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Recognizing those old stories and finding the courage to ask if they still fit the life you have now.
And now he's being really intentional about how he talks about money with his own daughter, showing her it's not just for survival.
That it's a tool for support, yes, but also for joy, for freedom, for making things happen.
Making that generational cycle.
That's a really powerful legacy to create.
So for anyone listening, if you recognize parts of Marcus's story in yourself, maybe you were taught money is scary, or wanting more is greedy, or spending feels wrong somehow.
It's time for that question.
Yeah. Ask yourself, whose story am I living? Is it actually yours, or is it an old one you inherited? And most importantly, is it still serving me?
It's really an invitation, isn't it, to look inward, understand where your beliefs came from, and realize you have the power to write a new story. A story that fits who you are today and where you want to go.
Definitely. And look, if this conversation about Marcus resonated, maybe share this deep dive with someone you know who might be wrestling with similar things.
Yeah, these conversations are important to have.
And just remember this, scarcity, at its core, it isn't really about the dollars and cents. It's about trust. Trusting yourself, trusting that things can be okay, and you absolutely are allowed to trust yourself.
That's a great point to land on.
Now, before we wrap up, if you want more insights like this, more stories, more tips to help you on your own financial path, you should definitely check out our YouTube channel. It's called Finance Tips.
Lots of great content over there to support that journey.
Absolutely. So head over to YouTube, search for Finance Tips, and hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive on the Money Mindset and Habits podcast.
Yeah, thanks for listening. We hope Marcus's story gave you some food for thought, maybe a new way to look at your own relationship with money.
And remember to subscribe to Finance Tips on YouTube.
Thanks again for listening to the Money Mindset and Habits podcast.